Okay, so welcome everybody, and hello, welcome to this professional series event. So it's great to see lots of people here again. So as you know, we run these events monthly covering different topics of interest. As always, please do let us know if there's anything in particular you want us to cover, or any new topics, or anything of interest that you want to share as well. We'd be very interested to hear that. Today we're going to be discussing wellbeing and productivity. We've split the session into two parts. We've got a few slides for an overview, and then we're going to go into a live discussion with Jonathan and Lucy, who I'll introduce shortly. Please do ask us questions throughout. Use the chat box. You can do this on the right-hand side of the screen. You can also email us or message us. But yeah, please do comment as we go through, ask any questions, and yeah, we'd love to sort of hear your feedback as we're going through. So as I said, the agenda, we're going to do the welcome and introductions, brief intro about Sova for those who don't know Sova or who are new to these events. We'll then look at psychological wellbeing at work, and then the live interview and any further questions. So yeah, that's the agenda. And then now on to the introductions. So as you know, I think you know John and I. So I'm Becky, and I'm going to be facilitating the event today. I'll also be sharing some slides. So I'm a chartered occupational psychologist and doing more and more work in the sort of remit of wellbeing at the moment. I'll hand over to John, and he'll briefly introduce himself.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jonathan, Managing Director at Sova Middle East. I've been working for about 18 years in the talent field. In the last three and a half years, I've been running Sova Middle East. Very much my focus is around helping our clients to innovate and digitalize their assessment processes. Okay. Looking forward to today.
Thank you. And then we've got Dr. Lucy Bolton. Want to say hi, Lucy?
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Becky. Yeah, my name is Lucy Bolton. I'm an assistant professor at Heriot Watt University, Dubai. So I lead our programs, our master's programs in business psychology and business psychology with coaching. I'm also a chartered psychologist, a registered occupational psychologist, and a certified business coach as well. And I've got coming up to 14 years experience in the field, mainly in academia, doing research, consultancy, and moving more into lecturing.
Okay, thank you. Great. And I think you'll notice we're all psychologists here today, so it's quite psychological, the content, but hopefully throughout you can see how some of these theories and ideas can be applied in practice, and we can certainly share with you what we've been doing in practice and really, what clients need and how we can help them. Okay, thank you. So we'll start the talk. I'm just going to hand over now to John, who will briefly describe Sova for those who are new to Sova.
Yeah, so hi everyone. So just a quick overview on Sova. So we're basically combining the latest in the science of assessment and the psychology within the assessment practice with the latest in technology. So from a science perspective, all of the tools that we create and that we have in our item banks are directly linked to organizational performance. And so really our kind of aim from an assessment perspective is to design something that is very accurate in terms of predicting job performance, but at the same time combining that with the latest in terms of a technology platform which enables us to deliver something which is completely modern, engaging and immersive for candidates, and configurable from our side in terms of what we might put on the platform. And sort of just linking that into the sort of the wellbeing topic for today, that might include wellbeing assessments, which we can put on our assessment technology, and also things like development programs, which might also be relevant to wellbeing. So just quickly to signpost a bit of the history about Sova. So we were formed back in 2015. Lots of us at that time had worked at Talent Q in the UK. Our founder, Dr. Alan Bourne, set up Sova with the express purpose of innovating in assessment and bringing in some of the latest practice in terms of technology and assessment science. So since our inception, we've gone through a number of different phases, which have included opening offices in Australia. We opened the office here in the Middle East in October 2018. We've had a really good time running the business since then. And we've seen some really good clients that we are now working with locally and also internationally, which has been really good. Last year, we had lots of innovations in terms of our virtual capabilities. So a lot of the work we're now doing is enabling our clients to run all of their talent assessment and development processes virtually, which is obviously a key thing in terms of the current market at the moment. And some venture capital investment that we received at the end of the last year has also enabled us to really expand this year. So there's lots of exciting things this year in terms of the roadmap. Be happy to talk to you more about that if you're interested in any of those things. And just last slide, just to really give you an overview of our assessment platform. As I mentioned, we've got some proprietary IP tools that we have on our platform, but we also configure bespoke and customized assessments for our clients. So as I mentioned, that might include anything from engagement and wellbeing questionnaires through to the more traditional personality and cognitive testing, but everything's wrapped around in this immersive single point of entry for candidates. And we have other technology around video interview and the virtual assessment center, which can be used both in selection context, but also development context as well. And we very much focus on the analytics. So what we do with the data after we've collected it, how we link it back to job performance, and provide insights for our clients, really. So that's just to give you a brief overview of Sova. And now back to the psychology, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. So psychological wellbeing at work, what is it? So there's lots and lots of definitions. We've just pulled out a few. So if you go to the next slide. So what is it? So different definitions. So the World Health Organization, so they state that it's a complete physical, mental and social well-being. It's not just the absence of a disease. Then the British Standards Institution say it's the adverse effect on the physical or mental condition of a person arising from exposure to a workplace health risk or work affecting condition. So this sort of implies it's a bit more situational. Then we have occupational health. They say it's the prevention of occupational ill health and improvement of work health. And then other people often describe it as, I mean, we certainly do as well in an occupational psychology setting, it can be about life satisfaction, mental and physical health, positive emotions, job satisfaction, engagement. And I'm sure there's lots of other words of how we describe it. So it'd be interesting to know how any of you describe it or how you might measure it in your organization. So please do type in the chat box. Be really useful to hear that. Okay, and just to say, you'll notice there's a bit of a delay. Someone else is moving the slides along, so just bear with us with that. So the relationship between wellbeing and productivity. So I think it's perhaps fairly obvious to most people. You know, the better we feel, the more well we are at work, the more productive we are. So if we think of those times when we're in our flow or we're really getting on with things, it's when we're feeling well. And not just well in our physical health, it can be our mental health, it can be our state of mind, it can be the experience around us, it can be just knowing you've got a holiday to look forward to at the end of the week. So there's lots of different factors which affect well-being, which then in turn affect productivity. So some research here in 2019 really does show here the strength of things like customer loyalty, productivity, and the correlation of this with well-being. So obviously the greater higher the amount of well-being we have, the greater productivity and the more loyal we feel. And this works as customers and employees as well. Then you can see that actually profitability goes down, staff turnover increases when we don't have well-being. So lots of knock-on impacts and implications. And I'm sure lots of you are seeing this at the moment. With sort of coming out of the pandemic, you know, what effect has this had on the well-being of the employees and what are the knock-on consequences across the organisation? So again, please do share anything that you're observing, just type into the note box. Okay, thank you. And then just a bit more on this. So obviously higher levels of well-being, really do show lower levels of sick absence and then presenteeism. So this is being present but not being feeling able to do work. So people might be in work, they haven't logged off sick, but they're not really working to the full extent that they can, or they're not motivated, or they're not feeling up to it. So it is all about increasing motivation, confidence, creativity. So these are all signs of increased well-being. So if we can enhance well-being or keep it at a certain level for an individual, then we get all of these features back out of the candidate. And there's lots of other factors, as I said, that make us more productive. And we're going to be discussing some of these in our discussion. And it can really be circumstantial. So one day you might be feeling more productive than another day, and this in turn impacts on well-being. So if you think of each person with all of these different factors influencing and affecting them, then we can see how such a complicated subject it is. And it might not just be a case of, giving someone yoga to do once a week. There's lots more we can do at different levels. Okay, next slide. So what causes poor well-being? So there's lots of different factors, and again, it depends on the person. So leadership styles. So we've got another slide on this as well to elaborate a bit more. But as we know, leaders can really, the quality of leadership can really impact on the quality of the employee and the work that they do. So different leadership styles people prefer to, prefer to work under. And we've all had bosses who aren't motivating, aren't engaging, but we've also, on the other side of the coin, had leaders who are, or managers who are. So it's about identifying for certain individuals what it is that motivates them, what do they need from their leader. And again, this can change from person to person as you move and change roles as well throughout the organization. So person role fit. So this always seems like an obvious one, but actually it can be forgotten in well-being. So if a person, just like we know for increased levels of performance at work, if you have the right person in the role, it's the same with well-being. If you don't fit into the role, or it doesn't align to your values, or it doesn't align to your behavior, then you're not going to get the best out of this person, and you're not going to be motivated. This can then have the knock-on consequence of making your well-being not be, where it is. Lack of people management, so training for managers. Again, just a simple step, management training. This can really help managers cascade, positive well-being initiatives throughout the organization. Lack of understanding. So quite often, we think actually just do X, Y, and Z, and this will help the person, or this worked for me, but it doesn't. It's about understanding the person, having a deep dive into, their motivators, their behavior, their personality traits, what situations have they been in life, what's going to impact and have consequences on their well-being. And then employees mistrusting organizations as well. So if your organizational culture is not right or not where it should be, then again, this can impact on well-being. Also, lack of emphasis on individuals. With lots of digitalization and streamlining processes, it's still important to have focus on the people behind what they're doing. People need to feel valued and all have individual needs. Another factor can be rigid application of HR processes. So just, we've all heard people say, I've got to fill in 101 forms, or I need this, and it's all about numbers. Someone who's doing this can be quite daunting, and again have serious consequences on their well-being. And then lack of understanding of what reduced well-being looks like as well. So lots of factors here, and lots intertwined. So I think what we're trying to show here is that it's there really is a lot to it. So we need to understand what causes poor well-being, and able to help people increase their well-being and perhaps enhance it further in certain areas. Okay, so enhancing well-being at work. So how can we do this? So the British Psychological Society have provided some guideline on this. So they say it's good to work within this framework. So it's about having good management, high quality work, looking and exploring the social climate at work, exploring what to do and introducing initiatives when people are struggling, health and wellbeing promotion, and all of this within wellbeing strategies and policies and procedures. So I'm just going to touch on each of these in very high level overview. but this should hopefully give us a good sort of basis before we get into the discussion. Okay, so good management. So this is about assessing management culture. Is the behaviour encouraged or not? Then it's about thinking, well, if you're having a change management program, how is this done? How is it implemented? Are employees going to be motivated at the end of it? And then what training or coaching do you need at the management level? And then high quality work. So we want, obviously, people to perform well and perform to the best of their ability, but people need to have what we would say is high quality work. So this is work that's interesting, engaging, it stretches them, it's suitable for them. So it's work that they're going to feel proud of doing and want to do. And this really does have an impact on well-being. So we all know what it's like if we're doing work and it's a bit boring, you don't feel right. Then you might not exercise, or you might not get enough sleep, and all of those other factors can link in as well. So we want to align work to organisational processes and goals, but make people feel that their job role is important, it's high quality, and provide support to them as well. And then the social climate at work. So with workplaces ever changing, what is the climate like? Is there even a climate? And we were talking to an organisation the other day, and they just said, we don't really know what our culture is anymore. It's changed. We used to be one thing. Now we're not, because lots of people work from home, and they're saying, well, we want to keep people working at home. But actually, part of being together and socialising was a strong part of that culture. So it's about redefining culture, redefining these workplaces so that we have a framework to pin well-being on. Appropriate assessments as well. So how is it being measured? So quite often we use engagement surveys or just general sort of surveys about how people are feeling, motivational questionnaires. There's also the one-item job satisfaction survey question, which you can use as well to ask how satisfied people are. So if we can keep monitoring this from afar, this will really help give us some data to help drive the decision-making towards well-being. And then ensuring that everything is inclusive. We want to include people. It's not a case anymore of just the leadership teams making decisions. It's cascading this information. It's having feedback from the bottom up. And then next slide. And then when people are struggling, so it's about then intervening, but are line managers equipped to intervene? Do they know how to? What happens with certain health conditions? What about flexible working practices? Lots of research around at the moment about flexible working practices, and it really does show that, people who are in families or in caring roles outside of work or disabilities or health concerns, they really do have greater well-being when they're given flexibility, which in turn increases productivity. And then health and wellbeing promotion across the organisation. So how is this done? Is it a case of a flyer in the lift saying there's a yoga session every lunchtime, or is it explaining, why we're doing these initiatives? And, it's not one-off initiatives. It's really is part now of the organisational culture and strategic plan going forward. We want to keep things current. We want to keep initiatives applicable, and also, free services benefit. There's lots that can be done, but we want to do all of these together to help enhance well-being for everybody. And the leadership style. So I mentioned this earlier. So this really does have an impact. So there's a theory, so the leader-member exchange theory, and this is all about the relationship people have, leaders and their employees. So, and it is sort of stating the obvious, if the relationship isn't great, then this can lead to poorer well-being and so on. But the importance here is it's a two-way. So people need to feel, that it's a two-way relationship. They can give input, they can also receive instructions, and it focuses on this relationship between the two, which can then help support wellbeing. It's also recognised that managers do play a key role in shaping organisational climate, as we all know, but also the influence, they can influence attitudes and behaviours. So if the manager or the leader isn't developed or hasn't undergone coaching or isn't on board with some of these wellbeing initiatives, then they're not going to work. So it's about going to the core of the organization, which is quite often the leader. And then management values. So obviously, are the leaders showing concern for employee wellbeing? And also, is this genuine? So like I said, it's not a case of having tick box exercises to do with wellbeing to help people feel better. It's about thinking, well, what is suitable for the organization? Is it genuine? Do people buy into this? Do they feel part of it? So this can include things like training for people, key roles for people across the organization to help shape the climate, showing the links, so really involving the people and seeing organizations as one rather than sort of the different levels. And then, as we all know, there's HSE management standards and sort of job demands control models and all of these things. This really impacts. So if we look at an individual level now and just person X, what are the demands like on their role? What control do they have? What social support? What relationships do they have? What's their role and what do they need to change? So this can just be quite a useful first step to sort of talk through with individuals who perhaps, do have lower well-being than others, to see, well, what is it that we need to change here? But also it's worth noting that all of these need to be working in the same direction to enhance well-being. And then solutions. So we are going to come on to this in the discussion, but just some solutions that we've been seeing and we've been working with organizations to do. So it's really about worldwide, organizational-wide intervention, leadership and management development, so through personal development, coaching, role fit, so using assessments to check person fit or for development, or as John said at the beginning, actually having wellbeing questionnaires and surveys, which we are seeing more and more people asking for. This can also be part of development programs and can just be a good way to sort of tick lots of these boxes. Leadership and management training, development, coaching, team workshops, workplace initiatives. Then we have all of the initiatives like health, exercise, nutrition, access to nature. What can we do to get people outside, flexible working schemes and work-life balance. So it really is about all of these alongside rather than just say having one or two of them. And then I've just got here, this is just very high level. So implementing wellbeing initiatives. I'll just touch over this, but if anyone's interested in more detail, I can share this slide with you. And actually, we will share this pack afterwards as well, so you have it and the recording. But it really is about, as you know, the consulting cycle, establishing agreement, identifying needs, formulating solutions, implementing, reviewing, and evaluating. But the important thing here is to think, well, how am I going to evaluate changes in behaviour after you've put in an intervention? So this is all about having engagement, attitude surveys, wellbeing surveys, questionnaires. So you can use this as part of the process to see how well your initiatives are performing. And then just before we move on to the interview, I've just got a couple of slides to show some popular wellbeing initiatives that are used. So again, some of you might be using these. Please do comment in the box if there's other ones you're using, or if you've got some experiences of any of these that have worked well or haven't worked as well. Things like mandatory lunch breaks, exercise sessions, eating stations, daycare, flexible working, mindfulness, health benefits, corporate wellness program, and dog toy. So these are just some. I'm just going to show you as well on the next slide what some of the big organizations are doing. So some of the well-known brands that we know. So just a few things we've pulled out to show you other ideas. So Google, they obviously have their employee wellness program. So how we care for Googlers. So this is like I suppose a leadership development program, but for wellness, lots in there. So very structured. Lots of things from sort of yoga and counseling to management training, all of that. Then Microsoft, they actually do things a bit differently. They give their employees 12 weeks of paid family leave, and they do hackathons to sort of innovate and help with their creativity. And then Asana, nap rooms to reduce burnout. I used to work with a law company in London, and actually one of the things they had was nap rooms. So they used to send the lawyers down to the basements when they had to work late, just to sort of replenish and, you know, feel better. And they used to have all of their food and that sort of thing brought in. But what we would perhaps say is that's meeting your basic needs, you know, sort of the food and the personal care. But actually well-being goes beyond that. It's thinking, well, what can we do to sustain this or actually address any issues that people have? Accenture, so they've got the improved health concept, sports activities. Nike offer their employees an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Expedia, I think this is my favourite one. They give you a fitness-related allowance, also travel allowance, holidays, and it's known as the happiest workplace in London. And I think they actually give you, could be wrong, I think it's something like 30 days extra of holiday. They give you all your hotels free, all your flights, and if you've been there a year, you get more benefits. And then Netflix, this is quite interesting. So unlimited time off, so 1 year's paid leave for new parents as well. And I think what they found is by, you know, saying to people have unlimited time off, actually it makes them more productive, and people, it's the job demands control, they have more control over what they're doing. And then again, this has a knock-on effect of enhancing well-being. So yeah, just some ideas, fun ideas there to think of. And yeah, that's a really whistle-stop tour of the psychological concepts of well-being. So what we're going to do now is move on to the interview part, well, the discussion part. So again, please do type in any questions if you have any. We'll all turn our cameras on now and just have a general discussion, but please do join in, or if you would like your microphone on as well, let us know. We would rather this was interactive than us just talking at you. So welcome back, Lucy and Jonathan, our panel today. So yeah, I hope you've got some good answers for all of us. So first question then, what evidence is there of a renewed focus on well-being at work? So what trends or what are we seeing at the moment? Who wants to go first? Lucy, do you?
Yes, yeah, I can do. Thank you for the presentation. Covered some really key points there. Well, when we think about well-being in the literature and in the research, well-being is a very broad term, and it can consist of complex constructs that are overall linked to quality of life. As you said, it can include psychological well-being, social well-being, happiness, well-being, mental health, personal adjustment as well. I really liked that you mentioned person, organisation, fit, because that gets overlooked so much in practice. And I think that personal adjustment and allowing yourself to align with your organisation is really key. But the focus on well-being and mental health has increased in the workplace and in our region, especially in the Middle East. Ultimately, we know that well-being links to motivation. It can give insight into why and how people behave the way they do in the workplace. And we know the links from research with job satisfaction, job involvement, performance. There, as you mentioned, there are also indirect effects with absenteeism, presenteeism as well, employee turnover, etc. So in line with an increase in focus on positive psychology and the world of coaching and more mental health awareness in the workplace, well-being has become more important, particularly in developing countries as well. But generally, countries are, they're bringing in a more of a well-being agenda. We've got the National Wellbeing Programme in the UK. There's the Stiglitz report in France, actually, where the government are focusing on well-being and also encouraging other countries to find ways to measure happiness and well-being. There's the National Programme for Happiness in the UAE, the Happiness Agenda. So you can see this movement away from the stigma around well-being and mental health. So there's definitely at that growing focus. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has shifted things and changed things a lot. Obviously, with the shift to virtual working, we've had diminished boundaries between work and life as more people work from home. So thinking about these effects, well-being has become more of a target or a focus for organisation, and the pandemic has accelerated this need for employees to prioritise well-being at work. So things around work-life balance, isolation, loneliness have become more important. Work-life balance has been linked to burnout. You mentioned some of these things as well, and a lot more external stressors around childcare, caring for family members, juggling work-life commitments has become more challenging. But we should also recognise, although that's a very kind of psychologically individual focus, we should recognise it's been challenging for the organisations as well due to economic implications and having to move towards redundancies and letting people go, businesses slowing down as well. So we can see the shift, and there's a lot of evidence around. I don't know if anyone knows the occupational psychologist Adam Grant. I talk about his stuff a lot, but during lockdown and the pandemic, he talked about something called languishing that you may have heard of, and it was kind of hitting some of the media headlines, and there's been an increase in what we call languishing, which is, it's not always seen as kind of mental health, clinical mental health issues, but it's where there's this sense of stagnation and emptiness and people kind of muddling through their work days. And he described it as you kind of feel a bit blah, or there's this foggy windshield. And sometimes it can be really difficult for managers and organizations to identify people experiencing languishing because they're just feeling really flat. But he mentioned, he focused a lot on flow, like you said, and getting people back into their flow in the workplace, and again focusing on this well-being aspect. So languishing has been said to be on the increase, again stressing the importance of time off and allowing uninterrupted work time. So so I think there's definitely been a shift towards wellbeing at work, generally, and of course due to the pandemic. And wellbeing is a basic human requirement, and organisations do have a duty to consider this and provide support to their employees.
Okay, thank you. Really interesting there. And I think, the concept of languishing, really interesting. I think we're hearing a lot from clients, that they say, or organizations, I've got XYZ top performers, but they just don't feel in the mood, or we speak to people and they just say, I just don't feel myself. People are saying, I've never had any sort of mental health concerns before, but now I'm feeling just, again, not myself. It's a bit like we all need to reset, but it's how can we do that whilst keeping productivity going at work, which is interesting. And especially like your take on it, it's the organizations as well. We need to look at the organization and the well-being of that. It's going through redundancies, restructure, lots and lots of change. What are you seeing, John, from organizations that you're talking to?
Well, I was just going to agree with Lucy. Exactly what she said is exactly right. I think there's the sort of general mental health awareness movement, which everyone would have seen across social media and in the press at the moment. There's been some really high-profile cases recently where well-known celebrities have sort of spoken up and talked about mental health issues. So there's that sort of general movement, but then also that's also permeating into the workplace. So I think employers are definitely more focused on this. And then when you add in the effects of the pandemic and the virtual working, there's an increased need for organizations to think about how we managing well-being at work, and particularly where people are remote and not necessarily physically present at work. What's the sort of value proposition there, and how we sort of managing this? So I think those two factors, as Lucy highlighted, are exactly right. And then there's lots of sort of apps and different digital startups who are focused on well-being. So we're seeing a lot of that in the market for sure, from an occupational perspective. I think most organizations we're talking to at the moment have a sort of an eye on well-being, because the increased focus on development of staff is related to trying to increase their well-being. It's related to organizations trying to retain people through things like development initiatives, which through sort of intellectual or psychological fulfillment is somehow going towards meeting people's well-being needs. But then there's also a sort of selfish bit from an organization's perspective, which is, we want the highest performers and we want people to, become more competent at their roles. But I think they're the sort of the main things, and we were definitely seeing sort of an uptake in interest in this area.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you say, key point, it is all in the forefront now. Things aren't behind closed doors. It's not like one person's gone off on sick leave and people are sort of whispering about it. It's this is at the forefront of everyone's minds, and obviously the pandemic has caused sort of an increase in stresses, but actually, perhaps a lot was covered up before. People have always had the same issues, for their whole life, around sort of flexible working, childcare, job demands, all of these things. And actually you think, well, how much was sort of covered up, or how much did people just get on with it? And then what were the knock-on consequences when they retired? So yeah, definitely a big shift that we're seeing. And yeah, what initiatives? So are the wellbeing initiatives at work still relevant in this new era then, thinking about that, or do we need something different? Who wants to go? Lucy?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to just comment on what you said. I think that's really key, because I know we say here, is it still relevant in the new era of virtual working? But you said, a lot of these things have actually been going on already. So virtual working is not actually new. And obviously many workplace global companies have been using virtual working for a number of years. But obviously it's become so much more predominant, and it's not been an option in a way for many people. So absolutely, wellbeing initiatives at work are still highly relevant, especially linking into that social well-being side and the mental health side. We've said about teams being dispersed and losing that connection. So the environment has obviously shifted to virtual, so the well-being initiatives will shift to virtual too. Now, if we think about what well-being initiatives actually are, then they're defined as including the promotion and the support of enhancing our physical or mental health at work. So things around coaching, health seminars, providing health tips, support through employee assistant programs, which are very common in organizations, helplines and counseling, can all be moved to online. I mean, I do coaching, I lecture on coaching, and I know there's a lot of movement to the virtual world with that, and about losing that bond and the face-to-face communication, and you have to kind of consider some different things around the psychological safety and setting up the trust in a virtual environment, which can have its challenges. But yeah, a lot of that can be moved to online, aiming to reduce stress and anxiety. There's been other things. You mentioned some things around discount gym memberships, the health side. There's discounted gym memberships, healthy snacks in the office. Those kind of things are harder to implement virtually, but there are benefits like this that can still be offered to employees. I've heard things around healthy living credits and to encourage healthy habits while people are not in the office, and supporting with meal subscriptions and various kind of fun challenges. But coming back to the virtual working, again, I think we should recognize some of the positive sides as well, because many people have quite enjoyed the effects of the pandemic, and they found the flexible schedules, time with family, the reduced commutes, working in a relaxed environment actually more beneficial. Some people have found their productivity has increased being at home. I mean, we didn't all anticipate lockdown perhaps going on for as long, depending on where in the world you are, but some people have really enjoyed moving their focus to family, and it's been seen as almost a positive spillover to cope with the pandemic or lockdown. So there are the wellbeing initiatives are obviously wanting to enhance well-being, but sometimes that COVID situation has actually already done it. And I think companies can obviously start to move towards technology for the well-being questionnaires and assessments that I know Sova does. You guys do a lot of analytical tools for data collection, so monitoring the employees and looking at engagement and satisfaction questionnaires, of course, are all really useful in the virtual world.
Okay, great, thank you. Really interesting. And what's the most interesting wellbeing initiative you've seen? John, do you want to answer? Have you seen anything different to what we've discussed, or anything working really successfully?
No, I mean, you've highlighted some of the initiatives there, and different organisations will be at different maturity levels in terms of what they're offering from a wellbeing perspective, because not all of them are going to be bought into investing in this type of thing for employees. So different levels of maturity and different organizations will be doing different things. But I think, one of the key things for well-being, if you think about it from a sort of individual worker psychology perspective, it's around giving them the control and the autonomy around how they do their role. So it might be sort of giving them flexibility in terms of how often they come into the office, and just, the literal sort of at task level, how they carry out their work. So it doesn't really matter how many demands you place on them, but if they have that control and that autonomy, as well as having that sort of moderated through social support and the channels to do that, which could be virtual, it could be in person. That will kind of lead to well-being from an individual perspective, which then collectively for the organisation would have an impact. So I think that's the sort of, for me, that's the most interesting possibility from a well-being perspective, is around how we're organising work and enabling people to do it, really.
Yeah, really interesting. And I think, like you say, it's about everything together, looking at how things fit together, especially around sort of the demands or the motivation and everything. And what about you, Lucy? Have you seen anything working really well, or anything very different that's new or quite interesting?
Yeah, I think companies can have some fun with this, and you mentioned creativity and the importance of that as well in your presentation. But there's, I've heard about things about mindfulness, meditation, virtual wellness retreats, nutrition advice, self-compassion, goal-setting exercises, all of those things, and encouraging the use of meditation apps and e-health interventions. A really interesting one I heard about was a home office makeover, which comes from a more kind of ergonomic perspective, and whether, we know the physical environment is so important for health, but companies encouraging or supporting with helping with expenses or discounts for things around ergonomic chairs, even things like treadmills at home, light therapy lamps, plant subscriptions, chair massager. I mean, it all sounds very nice, doesn't it? But, those kind of things can be considered by companies as well. Obviously, many virtual challenges, which we know goal setting and having even short-term goals. If you're feeling some of those feelings of languishing, or you're feeling, you don't know when. And I know we're mainly through the worst of lockdown, but at the time when we didn't know when it was going to end, challenges can keep people going. And there was drinking water challenges, clean home desk challenges, all that kind of stuff. At the university, we have 3 campuses, so we have Edinburgh, Dubai and Malaysia, and there were some really interesting initiatives going on with the students who we encouraged to try and get outside, as obviously with restrictions, and share pictures. Some were in different parts of the world, stuck in countries or back in their home countries, so got them sharing pictures. My colleague in Edinburgh was doing a stepometer challenge with the students, getting them to keep up their fitness. Colleagues in Malaysia were delivering online yoga and Zumba, which was great. I mean, we wanted to kind of help with that home sedentary lifestyle that was emerging. But I've heard of various things, some really funny things like work teams creating their own MTV cribs type thing, and people giving tours, virtual tours of their home or their workspace. So we've heard about virtual water coolers, quizzes, virtual happy hours, those kind of things. So it is really important. But coming back, just to some psychology and the research around work-life balance, it's really about setting boundaries as well. And I think that's been something that has affected well-being. But reminders can be really useful regularly to let people know when their shift or their working day is finished. And I think that's where technology can come in. Whether companies can be very innovative and bring in technology, gamification apps. Can have alerts to ensure people are actually switching off, and also leaders can be notified when teams are experiencing high levels of stress. And there's lots of digital solutions that can help with positive behavior change on a large scale. In a way, we've all got smartphones, fitness trackers, tablets, and things like that. So companies can get creative with these initiatives.
No, it sounds good. And I think, it's about getting creative, but in moderation. So you can imagine some people might find it so stressful to have everything tracked. So it's sort of using these things wisely, having a purpose to them, and not just doing them and seeing what people want. But I especially like the point you made about the, the initiatives to sort of help people with the work-life balance and at home. And it's sort of bringing these two together. It's sort of a case of, will it ever go back to your home being your home and your work being your work? There's so many pluses for it, but at the same time, then the minuses are sort of can feel worse sometimes, if you can't escape. So it is, like you say, it's the boundaries, it's setting those boundaries for yourself and for others, and adapting. It's this change process. Anything else to add here, John, to this point?
No, I think that's right. I mean, no, exactly as we said. That's I think it's about sort of taking a holistic picture of it and thinking about what's going to work individually and organisationally for different people.
So how can we do that then? So how can we make these initiatives successful? What are your sort of top tips to do that?
I think, yeah, just to sort of answer that question, number 4, I think, you know, there's a subjective element to well-being, which is the experienced, you know, the sort of experience of the individual of how satisfied with their life, their job, and different aspects of their well-being. And so that's a subjective measure. So there's a subjective element to it, but it's about establishing a baseline and making sure those measures are standardized. So we're asking the same questions each time. You know, as you highlighted earlier, there are job satisfaction questions. There's a sort of one-item questionnaire which you could use. You might use more involved questionnaires, you know, where we've designed in the past for clients well-being questionnaires which have lots of different scales in there and lots of different questions related to different areas of well-being. But I think ultimately it's around, you know, if you want to measure it, you have to establish a baseline, and then you have to see how that's tracking over time in terms of the, you know, the delta between baseline, time 2, time 3, etc. So yeah, just a standardized measure of it. It is subjective because it's the experience of the individual. So just recognizing that and sort of equipping organizations to be able to measure it properly.
Yeah, so sort of putting structure into that. And I suppose trying a few things, you know, just because something's worked once, you know, try something else. You know, as long as you sort of give structure to people, try different things, see what works best. And different people may have different needs at different times as well. And so then finally, how can we demonstrate this business case to organizations? What do we say if, you know, if we think there's more that can be done in our organization, but perhaps, you know, there are a few initiatives already there, but, you know, you feel more that can be done. What can we do? How can we demonstrate this business case? Lucy, do you want to answer?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of it is already there, but it has to be done. The true intentions of the initiative have to be genuine. There has to be genuine care and concern for the employees, not just a tick box exercise. Efforts should be really put into the design and the delivery of the initiatives. But thinking about the business case, obviously from a financial profit perspective, and again, you mentioned some of this, there can be detrimental effects and costs around turnover, days lost through absenteeism, long-term sickness, that kind of thing. From a legal perspective, of course, employers, depending on legislation in which part of the world you're in, employers are obliged to protect the health of their employees. As psychologists, we would see it as a moral duty anyway to be focusing on the well-being of employees. That's really, really important. But I think it's really key to have the participation and communication of the employees, which, again, you've already mentioned and John mentioned about the autonomy. End user involvement is really key, identifying the key stressors to address this. But thinking about the motivation for the organizations, by providing workplace wellbeing initiatives and showing that the organization cares about its employees, companies can enhance the overall culture of the organization. I think you made a really interesting point about how culture has shifted, and a lot of companies are feeling lost and not sure of their culture right now. But it's a way of saying to employees, you know, we appreciate your work. We want you to feel comfortable. We want you to be happy here. We want to take care of you as well. So that can help with productivity and focus, and help people feel a sense of belonging to the company, feel part of the community, and enhance loyalty. There's a psychological concept called organizational citizenship behavior that I'm sure you guys have heard of. And, you know, that's so valuable for organizations who, if you can instill citizenship into your employees, they're more committed to the company. You know, there's things related to it around altruism, civic virtue. It helps with the teams. You know, they go above and beyond, and they're generally happier as well in the organization. Just to add on to that, though, and it links a little bit to point 4 about what makes a wellbeing initiative successful, and I think the manager's attitude is really, really important. One of our postgraduate students did a project this summer looking at wellbeing initiatives in the UAE, and one of their key findings was about manager attitudes. They really it's really, really key. And I know you mentioned about leadership styles, but it's important that the leaders and the managers are all on board with the wellbeing initiatives and truly prioritize this for their employees. So managers who actually role model and who promote the well-being of their employees are as important as the actual initiatives themselves. It's really, really key.
Yeah, definitely. And anything else to add there, John?
No, I think the research is there in terms of, why is well-being important? Why should we look at it? And I think, therefore, it's just about demonstrating that and linking well-being. If there's an investment decision to be made in certain well-being initiatives, whatever that is, whether it's, flexible working or Olympic-sized swimming pools, I think, obviously for investment decisions, there needs to be a clear business case. So, but like we say, the research is there. We know X increase in well-being is going to lead to X increase in productivity, which then leads to organizational profit. So, sort of as trite as it sounds, sort of just demonstrating that business case. And just getting people on board, as Lucy says, across the organisation, because everyone needs to be kind of bought into it, and not just a sort of we're doing this just for effect, or even for sort of organisational reputation, because there might be a bit of that with some organisations who say, well, we've got an Olympic-sized swimming pool, isn't that great? Yeah, but what does that really? Is that the right thing for your employees, for example? So I'm not just picking on that example, but whatever it might be. So I think that's the key thing.
Yeah, great. And I think, like you said, it's individual differences. Different people someone might like the Olympic swimming pool, someone else might like gym membership. It just literally depends. So I think organizations, it's useful for them to recognize these individual differences, incorporate the ideas of the employees into the initiatives, and change these as well. You don't have to have one initiative for the whole year. You could change them quarterly. It's being flexible. So thank you very much, Lucy and Jonathan, for the wonderful discussion. It's been really interesting. I can't believe the time. We're just going to wrap up with a few slides, but yeah, really, really good discussion, and lots of food for thought, lots of things to think about as well. So yeah, if anyone does have any thoughts or ideas or anything to share, please contact us afterwards. Or if you want us to do another follow-up on wellbeing, there's quite a lot to it, we definitely can as well. So again, let us know. So yeah, if you would like any more information from any of us, please do get in touch. And I think you've got our email addresses, and we will also send out a follow-up after this. We'll send you this video as well, so you can have it. Also other events, so October, we've got data and artificial intelligence, and then assessment trends for 2022, which I can't believe it will be sort of thinking about the next year. And as I said, we might do something else on wellbeing or sort of work-life balance, something like that. And then just to remind you, we've got our Sova community. So this is now about 3 months sort of in the making. So we've got lots and lots of resources, training courses, information. You can chat with other like-minded professionals. It's all confidential when you're in there. So all you need to do is go to the Sova community. We can send you a link. You set up your registration page, and it's a bit like a private LinkedIn group, but it just means you get access to lots of resources, and not just resources from the UAE, but from our global partners, from London, from Australia, so from everywhere to do with Sova. So please do that. And as we always say, please let us know if you have any questions or if you want us to cover anything, and give us your feedback as well. Let us know what sort of session format you enjoy, or what you want more of, or what you want less of. And I think that's it. I think we just got one more slide. And yeah, just any questions, and thank you, really. Yeah, any final closing remarks? Yeah, any final closing remarks?
No, just thank you to Lucy for joining. Really interesting insights there, and yeah, thanks for joining the webinar.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'll let everyone go. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.